Good morning, welcome back.
Morning.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Can I won't introduce us again, but can I introduce Dave King? He's the project manager for this project, and he'll lead off with a quick intro.
Okay. Yep. So the report is just a recommendation to consider Pages Road Bridge of metropolitan significance, and I'll just run quickly through the headline reasons. It's a significant asset for the council. Decisions relating to its replacement extend beyond the immediate area. And relate to the following. So the role that the bridge plays as a strategic asset, it carries about 11,000 vehicles per day, it carries a wastewater pressure main, water supply into New Brighton. It's 91 years old and it sustained severe damage in the earthquakes, so we're pretty keen to get it replaced. It also, if we carry out works in the area, it will interact with other projects, the land drainage in the area, Avon River Corridor and New Brighton Master Plan. That will require a coordination of planning, the actual physical works and the physical footprints of those works. And so that comes down to the impact that any decisions could have on the design, have wider implications.
That's probably the nuts and bolts of it. Yes, sorry, we will be involving the community board. I just got reminded. The aim for this is to bring the decision making back up to council, but we will be involving and working with the community board closely and ensuring that their views are reflected in what's in whatever is brought forward for decision making.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most significant element of this.
Yeah.
I mean, having represented this area for a number of years prior to becoming mayor, I'm well aware of the history of the Pages Road Bridge, and then in my early times being frustrated to see Skirt take it off the program due to the lack of NZTA funding at the time, and defer it, and so that led to us putting it on our own program out to 2022-23. So I do remember it. I mean, this is a critical piece of infrastructure in the east. But it's also more than that. It's the gateway into New Brighton and beyond, and it's a critical lifeline as well. All my questions are about what happens next, so I won't do that because I know that would be an inappropriate series of questions to ask in relation to a paper that simply transfers it to a project of metropolitan significance. I think for the reasons that I've said, it is a project of metropolitan significance. But would you like to move the report? And I'll second the report because I'd like to join with you, Phil, in this instance on this particular matter.
Sorry, I might add one more thing. I was too busy rattling through the reasons why it's a metropolitan significance, but we have discussed it with the community board and no issues were raised.
Yes, and we did hear that earlier from the community board chair. And that's why also it was good that Phil moved that, being a member of that community board. I think that it does mean that we have more capacity to operate at this level, and the next report will come through because this makes a delegation to the Urban Development and Transport Committee, which will be able to assess it. Everyone sits around the table for that one, but Mike's committee can take this up, knowing that the community board is going to be fully engaged in the process. Yeah. Any question?
I just wanted to chat in terms of the process. Will the community board be able to make formal recommendations to that committee of council?
The process will run. I envisage the process will run very much like it does with the cycleways, and that yes, they will be able to make formal submissions to that committee on the way. And we will, and staff will engage, and we will do our utmost to ensure that the community board views are reflected in that report, in any reports that we come up with staff reports. Perhaps
move an additional resolution, because I've dealt with a few bridges before, and they are Ferrymead Bridge. It's a council decision, but actually the board should make recommendations to council, so they've got a report, they've got the information, and they can put forward formally because I just think it's a much better process. It's a process I think we've used in the past for Metropolitan things. It's worked well. I don't share the view that the cycleway process has actually been very good. I know as local councillor, you weren't even allowed to sit at the table.
Sorry, we're doing questions at the moment, and you've entered into the
Okay, well, can I
debate,
foreshadow an amendment?
Yeah. It may be one that we are prepared to work through and accept. The thing is that I'm perfectly accepting of what the staff have said was the case, and so is the chair of the community board, but, and you're not, anyway. Sarah?
No, I was just going to speak to that, just because...
No, we're not going to speak to
so
an amendment.
I'll go after Yanni in the debate.
Well, I'm unclear as to whether we should work out whether to add an amendment, because it's not a recommendation from the community board. It is advice from the community board, essentially, because this. I mean, the question is this is a metropolitan project, and it is. It's part of a network. It's part of Lifeline's network. It's just it is bigger than a community board project. It is not a pedestrian bridge. It is a Lifeline bridge. So, Anne, did you have a question? Mike.
I have a question which is more of a general question, but I'm interested in how this has become a metro project. What elevates it? You've talked about traffic and you've talked about access to the area, but you've also talked about the fact that it has an impact on the wider city. So I'm wondering, for example, an intersection on Riccarton Road that is pretty important to the whole of the city's work. How do we assess what becomes a metro decision and what stays as being a community board delegation? Is that this might not be the appropriate time to talk about that?
I mean, shall I be blunt? I mean, I think the real reason is that the community board doesn't have the power to make a decision to move it forward on the budget.
Right.
Is that
so? It's about money. No.
Well, they can't move it forward on the budget. We have to put it on the LTP.
Well, it's in the LTP. This particular project is in the LTP at the moment. There are a range of criteria, and I think you've alluded to them, Councillor Galloway, about what the reasons why this particular project is. But I think there's a wider conversation around projects such as the Riccarton Island Middleton Road intersection, where some of the delegations, namely Lines and Signs, sit with the community board, and that project can't be progressed because you can't upgrade the intersection without doing the lines and signs.
Yep.
So I think there is an issue around safety projects, public transport projects, projects such as this, where you've got bridges which carry a significant number of vehicles that are lifelines, and whether or not they should all be considered projects of metropolitan significance, but that's probably beyond the remit of this paper.
I'd like to signal in some way that we have that discussion at some point.
Not
sure what to do.
Briefing.
Yeah, no, I actually agree that it's important because, I think you raise a good point. Who was the other person that had their hand up? Mike.
Thank you. Just for my memory, was this project originally going to get TFAR? Even though it's actually an important access route?
It was never listed in the TFAR list, if my memory serves me correctly.
Okay. But it was, we moved it forward, didn't we? And then it got pushed back because of funding issues from NZTA?
Oh, I can't answer that one off the top of my head, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, I don't think it was one
I
of
don't
those.
remember it being...
That's right. And I guess the other thing, because I sent an email to the Office of the Sea, and it might have come down to you, but actually looking at trying to create, I guess, a policy around intersection safety to make sure that some of our, I guess, more dangerous intersections that are ranked quite high actually get addressed properly when they go through this process. So I think it's something we need to look at developing.
Yeah, we've just had a conversation on those matters this morning, a start.
So, is there anything in here that we could simply clarify in relation to the community board so that it's really clear that the ongoing decision-making is delegated to the Urban Development and Transport Board Committee with advice from the
Yes, so
from the Burwood Pegasus Community Board.
Coastal Burwood.
We're comfortable
Coastal
with that.
Burwood, sorry, I'm living in the
We're
past.
comfortable with that.
I'm living in the past at the time it should have been
We
done.
could take another resolution that council staff engaged with the relevant community board prior to reporting to Urban Development and Transport.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to have a separate resolution saying that
And
staff.
what we will do,
That council staff engage with the relevant community board prior to reporting to Urban Development and Transport on this project.
Yes. Yep, so it's a separate resolution. Yep, that's right. Good. Right, so you're happy with that, Phil? I'm happy with that. Thank you. And Yanni, you want to foreshadow, oh no, you want an amendment to change the word to...
Or just clarification. I just want to be clear though, when the staff go to the board, will they have a list of the options and the recommended option, and that report will be able to be voted on by the community board?
no, it won't be voted
Not
on.
voted on, it'll be engagement.
See, I just think we get into this whole semantic issue. I've just sent you around people with the ferry made one.
Sorry, I
And I can't
can't
see them.
access my emails, which has been my problem all morning. You'd know that if you'd had a conversation with me earlier, like everyone else did. I've asked people not to look at emails during council meetings. It's not appropriate.
Sorry, I was just around the bridge.
The point that your amendment is that you want council, you want to replace 3, you want to amend 3 with something that says delegate the ongoing decision making to the Urban Development and Transport. No. So you want to delegate the decision. No, well, you just vote against it. It'll stay a community board project.
Request council staff seek formal recommendation with the relevant community board prior to going to the Urban Development and Transport.
Well, then it's not a metropolitan project. Just vote
Exactly.
against the resolution. You are not making it a metropolitan project.
On metropolitan issues in the past, the boards have been able to get the report and make a recommendation to council. It's still a metropolitan project. The council still retains full delegated decision making on it. It simply means that the board is fully informed with all the information.
So you want to amend number 3 to read that,
Could I ask a question of a member, please? Just what happens then if the recommendation from the community board is against what council needs to do in terms of a metropolitan project? Do we have to then overturn what the community board says?
I'm not going to have councillors asking each other's questions around the table.
can I
Can we
s-
just get some advice?
So the way we've done this and the way we intend to do this with this is to work with the governance team out at the board to ensure that the board, if they want to, can make a formal submission to the process and to the committee, and that is, and we work with them to make sure that that's done, and they've got all of the information that they require before that board through a briefing process and a.
So we'll brief them and we'll take on board their comments. If they're still unhappy with the report that goes up to Urban Development and Transport, they can do a submission in support or opposition
So
to
this
that.
will have to go to a hearings process anyway.
Yep.
So,
They will be able to be.
so given that, it's entirely appropriate that the community board leaves its powder dry, as it were, in terms of making a submission to it.
Yeah, there will be.
There'll be RMA approvals required for this as well, so it'll be quite a convoluted, quite a long process before we start digging holes in the ground.
Right. Okay. So,
So is there a potential then for the if there's a hearings panel, like a council hearings panel, for there to be a board member potentially on that? They couldn't be part of the board submission, but yeah.
look,
There's lots of ways to involve, but this is just whether it's
these are the
metropolitan or not.
difficulties when people don't sort of engage in the discussions that are going to be had today, because we can work up advice on these things. So let's just put this to one side and carry on. I'm going to come back to this shortly on the agenda and see if we can work out some wording, because I can't, unless, Yanni, you can put an amendment on the table now. Can you put an amendment on the table? Amend 3 to say what?
Request the council staff seek recommendations from the Development Community Board prior to the reporting to the Urban Development Committee.
And rule them out of the submissions process. Because, okay, well then, so that he wants to replace the words engage, so copy that and put it as an amendment.
Can I just check on the implications of that from staff? If they make a formal recommendation, normally that would mean that the hearings panel would be reporting to the community board instead of reporting to the committee. So like with, and I think that if council are final decision maker, they should be hearing from the hearings panel.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the wrong way round. So, which is why this is fine, but I'll speak against Yanni's amendment. So we've got Yanni's amendment, which is request council staff seek recommendation from relevant community board prior to reporting to the Urban Development and Transport Committee. And it's the community board that would have to conduct the hearing then in order to... I don't know if that's right. Is that right? That the community board would then have to set up the hearings panel to make a formal recommendation?
Lord.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean...
That would be changing the process that would normally use.
Nobody had advance warning of this. This is not something that the community board have asked for. It's something that you've asked for at the last minute. So it's not a good process.
You would normally have a hearings panel or a community board making a recommendation.
I've got a mover for this. Do I have a seconder for it?
For what? For what? The amendment?
Okay, we've got a seconder, Jake McClellan. No, would someone like to move I'd like to move a procedural motion. Yeah.
I think we need some proper advice from staff, realising that the people...
Move that the question be now put.
Realising that the people that we've got sitting at the table were not prepared to answer procedural questions as to what this would mean, because before anybody can decide whether they support this amendment or whether they don't, we need to know what it means for the process, what it means for the roles and responsibilities of the community board and council, what it means for timelines and processes, what delays would be involved and what that would mean for the project, what it might mean for any associated funding decisions, and then we can make an intelligent and informed decision on whether we support this amendment or not. The answer to the question was, I think so, and I understand why that's the answer to the question, because we don't have the staff that have got that detailed knowledge sitting with us here at the table, and I absolutely respect that.
Okay, so we're going to do 1 and 2 first. So I will put 1 and 2. Classify the Pages Bridge replacement project to be a project of metropolitan significance and delegate the ongoing decision making to the Urban Development Transport Committee. I will then move to the amendment and we will deal with the amendment. So 1 and 2. I've got a mover and a seconder.
Is it not just a foreshadowed motion?
No, it's an amendment to number 3.
Well, wouldn't you just then vote against 3 if you wanted the amendment?
Yeah.
And then
Well, he did
it means
say
that you don't
amendment.
have-
Are you happy for it to be a foreshadowed motion?
Well, just
No, it
we've
makes
wasted
it,
enough time on this
I have
already.
to split
So
it now. So foreshadowed motion, so have it as a foreshadowed motion. I'll deal with 3 separately.
Can we just add into 3? Can we add in that we can engage and we will report to the committee on that engagement?
Right, thanks for your help. Right, so I can't see any other way of doing this other than it's an amendment to 3, but we can deal with 1 and 2. And so we'll open, well, we've got a mover and seconder for the 3. So I will move to, I'll move to the whole thing. So the order that I'm going to do this in is I'm going to do 1 and 2 together, and then I'm going to move to 3 separately and deal with the amendment first, and then I will deal with the substantive motion. Yeah, that's the easiest way. All right, okay. So I'll open it up for debate. Yes. Mike, and then Yanni.
I'll be really, really quick. I'll support the 1, 2 and 3 as they stand up there. End of the day, with number 3, the community board is actually aware of the process. They're happy with the process, and I'm happy to support that view. I'm not supporting an amendment from a council in a totally different area.
Yanni?
So, a few years ago, this council was an award-winning council in terms of the Bertelsmann's Prize for Good Governance, and I was lucky enough to be on the community board when we were regularly winning awards. And, one of the key things was the strength of our community boards. I can't see why a council that wants to support and strengthen community boards would be against allowing a community board to make a recommendation. I actually think this helps the process rather than hinders it. It's been a practice that's worked well in the past. From my experience with bridges, which I agree that this is a Metropolitan Lifeline project and it should be the council that makes the final decision. And what you need to get, I think, in your minds is there's a difference between making a recommendation and making a decision. But by having the report with all the information go to the community board, they can be informed and they can reflect the community views as they see them. So I can't see that this hurts the case at all. I am concerned about how some of the cycleways have been done, when as local councillor you're not even able to sit around a table that's making a decision. That sometimes we have weird sort of workshops or presentations, but we don't get a chance to formally vote on issues that come in front of the board. And then somehow that's delegated to someone else to come along and reflect views when there's no clear formal decision-making process around those recommendations to provide that feedback. And, so I just think, let's learn from what hasn't worked well, let's use something that's worked well, and have no trepidation about allowing the community board to make a recommendation so that they can see all the information that what the community views are and be informed, rather than just be engaged as a submitter. I find it quite bizarre that we would just treat our community board like a member of the public. I think they're much greater than that, and that's why I've moved what I have.
Thank you. Andrew?
I'm going to abstain on 3 because my belief is that we need further information about what it means to be able to vote on it sensibly. So I'll be abstaining on 3 in the recommendation and 3 the amendment.
Phil?
I'd just like to say, because I am on that community board, we are actually over the moon that we're getting a lump of concrete over a ditch. So we will work in with whatever these guys do, and I'm sure they'll keep our community board in the loop. And I'm sure I'm speaking for the rest of my guys that are there. Just let's get on with it, and let's get going.
Excellent. No, sorry, that was the end of the debate. So I will put the motion. 1 and 2.
Yes.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. I'll put the amendment. The amendment moved in the name of Councillor Johansson and Councillor McClellan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
That is lost. Does anyone want to have their vote recorded otherwise? Well, you're going to vote against the 3 anyway. So I'll put item number 3. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You vote against engaging with the board if the other one's lost.
Can you note Councillor Turner's abstention?